were my goals for the story arcs of season 2? Well, I think part of it was just finishing out a lot of the ideas that we had from season 1.
We didn't anticipate ending the season with that episode last year. So when we came back, we were sort of put through a drill by the network. They wanted to know what we had in mind for season 2. In season 2, we really wanted to expand the scope of the show. And when we say expand the scope, that means being on location a lot more.
Some of the things that I was interested in at the end of season 1, we've been exploring a lot in season 2. Specifically, what's the residue from Cameron's damage to her chip? How has that affected her ability to do her job? How has it affected her relationship with John?
Are you busy?
No. So we kind of came into this room for a few weeks and started talking about, where we had left off and where we might want to go. And everything kind of focused on the John Connor character. And we decided that this should be the year of his emancipation from his mother.
Now is not the time for this.
Now is not the time. Well, when is the time?
It was really about the family dynamic and trying to see whether or not I could pull the family apart and put them back together again.
You're pissed off because I found someone I actually like spending time with, and it's not you.
Everyone already knows she's building Skynet. Everyone already knows that the Turk is Skynet. So we're all waiting for it to wake up and be evil.
The writer's room is a very almost sacred place on our show. And it is where, outside of Josh's head, where, every creative idea is vetted.
It's challenging, and this is the first show that I've ever run, so I took a lot of my cues from John, actually, who's been doing this for many years, but at the same time, it was creatively, I was sort of, as George Bush said, I was the decider.
It's about what do we want to do with the Ellison character. Where do we want to take that character, and how do we want to use that character to reveal the place where we want to get, like at the end of this season, right?
But she's still sort of means testing him where we are in 11, which is that he has to go through the Savannah hoop in order to get to the end of 11, which is sort of a false beat because he's done so many other things that would sort of justify his involvement. Specifically bringing the body. You want there to be a good, healthy debate about things, and you want to hear every good idea. You don't want anybody, from a co-EP to a staff writer, you don't want anybody to feel like they can't express a great idea because they're all writers. They're all, they're very good writers. That's why we hired them. So they're all eminently qualified to have a great idea. And I think, so you want to foster that, and you don't want anyone to feel hesitant, like you're going to shut them down or make fun of them or again, just not hear them.
At least my read of it is that Cameron was on the road to some sort of, to becoming more than what she was. I don't think that means the data she's going to become human. It means that she's, that she's growing beyond her original programming in an interesting way.
If her overall programming includes trying to become as human-like as possible in order to have John love her, then anything that she could do to practice or investigate humanity and becoming more human,
more human-like,
or more human-like, is within that prime directive. So I think that trying to just, have good chemistry in the room and some continuity with your staff over time is probably the best way to get the best ideas. And then I just have to be smart enough to either to see a good idea, or get out of the way.
Ellison's job is to this happened.
The process at Sarah Connor is extremely collaborative. We break stories collectively as a team, and then each writer takes one episode and writes it from start to finish.
It's very organic because sometimes you go in there having no idea where you were even supposed to go until somebody throws something out that everybody jumps on.
Sometimes people come in with an individual episode idea or just like a thread of a storyline, and we build on it, and it's just very, very collaborative.
Listen, I have a big problem. It's going to sound very strange, but I've been transformed into an eel. I'm in the office of Catherine Weaver. You gotta come help me because I'm the only eel in the office.
8 heads are better than 1. So everybody contributes to the story. We break it down in detail and we write it up on the board. I mean, even, you know, like Act 1, Number 1, exterior, Connor house, day. And then we have a little block of prose that we write up there, and that usually contains what is the action of the scene, who's in the scene, what are the characters' attitudes in the scene, and how does it get us to the next scene, you know, some sense of what happens next. Josh loves the notion of driving a story forward by asking yourself the question, what happens next? And then what happens? And then what happens?
Where are we going now?
We're not going anywhere. I'm going somewhere. And I'm gonna go alone.
You shouldn't be alone.
Yes, I should.
Once we have a broad idea, we just start trying to come up with story beats, and we all sit around and throw out story ideas, and what if this, and what if this happened, and we make lists, and we fill up boards, and we draw diagrams, and get in arguments.
It seems like we're wagging our dog to try to, you know, get rid of this character Sherman, and we should be thinking about how it advances our story with the Turk. I mean, because the Turk is going to stay around. So,
well, that's why I thought, like, if the Turk is old, but I think if we're centering it on, hey, let's just kill Sherman because, oh, he's really inconvenient in terms of following him. That's into the pitch.
I mean, philosophically, I'm not against killing off Sherman at some point. I just think, like, episode 11 is too early to do it. I think it overloads the episode, and I think it's way too early to put blood on the Turk's hands, even accidentally.
At this point, I think it's just wrong, and I don't think.
What if Shirley did it?
Yeah.
Could be, but my question is why?
Oftentimes conflict equals drama, and we have our share of that, although we try and, you know, we do our best to keep it respectful, and if we're on the attack, we are going after each other's ideas and not after each other as people.
It's relatively egalitarian, like everybody has a say, and that all starts with Josh.
Josh is very interested in his characters and what they're going to do and making them very, very unique.
So once we kind of have the story, we talk about it kind of in general terms for a couple of days, and usually the writer will go to one of the whiteboards and write down any idea that kind of sticks.
And then we send some unfortunate soul or fortunate soul off to write the first draft of that script.
The writer goes off, writes the script. I do a set of notes on the script, which I give to Josh, and then he does the final pass on the script. Every single script we do here runs through his computer.
We have usually at that point a really strong structure. I rarely have to restructure things, but sometimes we were getting scripts pretty much probably 36 hours before we had to start prepping them. I would take that script and hole up in my room for 2 nights and rewrite it, kind of, you know, making it all into the voice that I like.
John is John's problem. Humans are the problem. There's only one way for him to be safe. That's to be alone.
This season, one of the things we set out to do was to create some standalone episodes so that new viewers could watch our show and feel that they'd seen a complete episode.
I know him.
Unless you're about, 110 years old. That photo's from 1920. See, December 31st, 1920.
As the season progressed, we realized that, you know, there is a literary quality to the show. There's a novelistic quality to the show. In the television world, they call it being serialized. I look at it as literary because I feel that Josh has poetry to his vision and to his writing.
There's a bit of a life cycle to the whole process, and I think on a lot of shows that have a lot more standalone aspects, it's easier because you may have a writer come in and say, I want to do, you know, this, or I read this article about, you know, this, and maybe we should do an episode about this. And our show doesn't really work that way because it's so serialized. And I think even in the second season, where some people had a sense that it was more standalone, at least for the first part of the season. It really had to carry all these serialized elements, and you could never ignore the mythology. So it's very difficult for us to sort of send people off on independent study and come back with 5 story ideas. It just doesn't work that way.
So when it comes to deciding what we're going to do, he's the final arbiter. It's all about what he wants to do. He sets the table for us. He tells us where we're going. We have a lot of talented people on this writing staff, and everybody contributes, and everybody, you know, over time, it kind of sifts down. Everybody, it's like a family, dysfunctional family of brothers and sisters.
There needs to be, and is on the show, a central vision and aesthetic. You know, it's not just about what are our mythology beats. It's how we tell the story, how we use language, how we use voiceover. Those kind of things need a very specific aesthetic, and Josh has that.
For all of us, it's really been we have mutual respect for each other, and we've sort of found a niche. You know, I mean, James spends almost all of his time on the set, or you know, and has really done a great job of kind of taking what he knows from me and the things that are important to me in a performance, and found ways to communicate them to the directors and to the actors.
So if you watch our episodes and you can go from 1 to 22, I think you'll have a real sense of this all has a feel to it. It feels of a whole. It feels like, you know, one thing rather than 8 separate people's ideas of what the Sarah Connor universe is like. And that's the power of having a very strong creator with a vision.
Any television show, by and large, it's falling in love with those characters and watching them struggle and change through time. And that's the same for this show. I mean, this show just happens to have an action component to it and a scary robot component to it. But at the end of the day, it's a show about these family members trying to struggle against mortality.
It always is about storyboarding. Storyboarding is vitally important.
Joel's directing second unit. He'll go upstairs and he'll lock himself in a room with the storyboard artist and the director, and they'll start planning every shot drawn out.
What a storyboard is, it's basically a hand-drawn cells of the action of what we're going to shoot. So I like to sit down and storyboard a lot of the action sequences. The director knows this portion's delegated to second unit, this port's the first unit, and so it's seamless.
As soon as the boards are done, I get a copy of them, and then we start collaborating on how we're going to get these shots, where the camera's going to be, what's needed for me, whether it's cars, whether it's bullet hits, whether it's something exploding. We all know which direction we're heading, so when we get to that day, everything is ready.
John, you can't do this. You don't know what you're about to do.
Yes, I do. You're gonna kill me.
No, John, you can't do this. You're not doing the right thing. This is not the right thing, John.
Here's another aspect of storyboarding which is vitally important, is it's a communication tool. It's a language. You know, little figures in a box that is the aspect ratio, the 16:9 aspect ratio of HD, that becomes a visual language that shows the DP, the stunt coordinator, the special effects coordinator, the actors, what's happening in the scene. And the more information you can give people, the more empowered they are, and then everyone now is at another level and goes, oh, here's what the scene's really about. Now let's go farther with that.
Great sets make everyone's jobs a lot easier.
In many of our stories, the writers create environments that are unique to the Terminator universe.
What you look for, and I think what Merrick has brought to us, is just a level of adventurousness in terms of what he wants to do.
From the beginning of this season, we wanted to expand the cinematic scope of the show. And a big part of that must be with production design.
We didn't really have that first season. We didn't really have kind of these amazingly well put together, art-directed places, and it makes you feel that you're a part of something big, and the scope and size of it makes your days easier.
The biggest difficulty is the time frame. You know, we have very little time, so it's like 2 weeks most when we have to put together a new concept.
He built Catherine Weaver's office, which is on our stage. It's supposed to be on the 26th floor of a building downtown. He created all that glass. You know, that glass is all gimbaled. It kind of moves and everything. Difficult to shoot in, but looks great on film.
I walked in, I just was gobsmacked. I had expected it to be more like a music video where things are cheated to look bigger than they are, but this was this huge, expansive set.
What I wanted to achieve a kind of minimalistic look of very modern high-tech architecture, which is not too futuristic.
It's an expensive set, and we've ended up using it for 2 episodes, which is great, but it's just phenomenal. And I mean, to be able to have an episodic TV show when you walk around and go, we built a nuclear sub, and it looks better than a lot of feature versions of it.
That was a challenge because we had very, very little time, and the possibilities were quite limited. And at that point, I had the tunnels, and I had some space there, so I felt, why not use some of the structure of the tunnels and convert that to a corridor of the submarine, and to build the control room.
Each one of these corridors has to be like 2 or 3 different places. The control room is the only one a part of the set that stays in the control room the whole time, but the bay becomes 3 different sets. So we just had to kind of figure out a way that we could, you know, change it up lighting-wise and stuff so that it worked. And the big thing there was, you know, color.
We decided that we're going to build a lot of the lights inside the sets, so it was very easy for him to change the colors, change the color temperature and the atmosphere.
It was an amazing set, not only because it obviously looked great. It was so versatile. We had one corridor, which became 7 wonderfully different corridors.
The first time we shot in the tunnels, I was, you know, you read the script, but until you're really in the set and on the location, you can't completely connect to what's really happening. So when you're in this small enclosed tunnel network and system, you know, with dirt and the pipes and the dust and the noise, and it's the most helpful thing ever. I mean, if I was doing that purely in front of a green screen, it would never turn out the same.
With that set, Mark constantly reminds us of what Sarah is fighting for.
I think my favorite sets are the ones in the future. More than anything, those are the ones that really take me to a new place. And I feel that we've really done some beautiful sets. And my favorite one, I think, from this whole second season was Allison from Palmdale when I'm running through the tunnels.
In the Turk room, Mark had a lot of great ideas, and the best idea that he had were 2 large glass panels that otherwise would have been walls.
The biggest challenge in that set was when John Henry is hooked up to the Turk. he is learning how to communicate.
Again, going back to his sense of wanting to find depth and translucence, he pitched the idea of having these walls be actual monitors in which we see John Henry's thoughts. And they have become really great for us in terms of the cinematography that we're able to achieve in that room.
This set came alive because everything that was projected on those screens, you could shoot through, you could shoot it backwards. It reflected on the floor, reflected on the faces of the people, and at the same time, if you really wanted to concentrate, you could really clearly see that image or even see it on the monitor. So wherever you turn around, you had the feeling of where the message is coming from.
When we first walked onto this set, which was a real big project for the entire production team, we were delighted. The way that the images project onto those window panes is fantastic, and it gives the set a dimension that we really love. And it allows us to do visual storytelling, which is what we want to bring to television. We like telling our stories visually, and that's the best thing that this set does.
I think what was most rewarding is the variety of themes. We went to Mexico. We went to the desert. We were by the beach in Santa Monica. We were downtown. We shot in Japanese restaurants. We had high-end sets. We had low-end sets. We had the future, the post-nuclear Los Angeles. So this was the most interesting aspect.
Merrick brings a very artistic sensibility to it. Sometimes it's ridiculously ambitious and we can't do it and we have to pull him back, but that's great. You know, I mean, that's what he's there for.
He builds these sets that really photograph beautifully, and I think he's made an enormous contribution to the show.
Mark has diligently gone through every script that we have and tried to express the intent of the scripts in his production designs, and he's done a fantastic job in helping us realize the intent of the screenplays. In all of our episodes that utilize action, we try to actually move the story forward in our action sequences as opposed to just creating explosive eye candy.
Always, to me, the most challenging thing is trying to get drama and emotion within the context of an action sequence, which we try to do a lot. Our show has always had sort of an old school approach to these things. I mean, if we can do it practically, we want to do it practically. In stunts and in special effects, you really need somebody who's done it for a long time.
James Cameron taught me, he goes, I will shoot it real until I can't. Everything I can shoot real, I'm going to shoot it real.
In the opening episode of season 2, Samson and Delilah, we do a pretty spectacular stunt. We flip a car that Sarah is driving and crash it into the LA River.
Joel will lay out what he wants to get done. Then he'll come to me and say, Steve, I need this beefed up, the forward quarter panel, or I need this reinforced here. We'll take the cars back to our effects shop. We'll open them up and we'll reinforce them, and we'll have them ready for crash day.
And when we flipped the car, we came up with the idea that Summer would just appear, and Lena would barrel down straight towards her. She'd dive to the side, hit the car, we'd slide it at 45 miles an hour, and we actually used what's called a cannon and flipped the car over a barrier and launched it 80 feet into the LA River.
That was a big deal, and you know, it involved a lot. It had a lot of moving pieces. We had actors and stunt people, and those two guys, you know, figured out a way to catapult that car.
It took hours and hours to rehearse that, just to get ready for it. And the stunt turned out really, really well.
They really are sort of the yin and yang of how all that action stuff comes together.
In order to really make the scene real, all the other department heads come in. You know, Jim Lima comes in at some point because he's got to actually remove that projectile that shot out from under the Jeep to make it look like it just happened.
The longer you can hang in there where you see it's just about to leave his head, you'll beat him anyway.
What a way to start the season. Put my actress in between two real trucks and have one truck smoking the tires.
The glass is Mylar covered. When it blows, Steve has told me that it will blow out towards us, and because it's a boat, it will spread everywhere.
In this sequence, there'll only be 2 stunt people, because what we're going to do for the actual crash, instead of putting a dummy in there, they'll shoot Summer against green screen, reacting to what the impact would do to her, and then that'll be computered, that'll be drawn in later.
3, 2, 1, go!
We got a hold of those trucks and I started carving and reinforcing and bringing them together, actually fitting Summer for that sequence.
We had designed a full steel cage in between there. We did pre-damage on the truck after the crash, and with a separate set of trucks where we could put Summer in there, and she was just surrounded. It's like being in a roll cage of a race car.
Some of the parts of the truck I took to the plaster shop and had them cast it out of foam rubber for me, so they were soft for her. But those trucks were actually running trucks.
And the way David shot the close-up sequences, it looked like she was just wedged in there, but it was all prefabricated.
I really loved the day we spent in the water. And we went to this water tank. It's when I followed John off the pier, when he jumps into the water, and Carmine just goes without hesitating, because that's his goal.
Anytime you're working underwater, I tell people, if people aren't comfortable with water, then you need time to train them. If they're not scuba divers, you can't expect somebody to go in there, get on breathing apparatus, and hold their breath.
Well, for that final stunt, we had a lot of problems, trying to sink, because it's always good to get, as much of the actor doing it as you can get closer. But I think because of my boots, I had these cowboy boots on that were full of air, and so when I would jump in, it just would automatically flip me over until it filled up. So I had a real hard time getting the feet down.
Garrett Delahunt was very comfortable. He had a couple of scuba training lessons. He took to it like a dog to water. It was not a problem.
They'd tied a rope around one ankle for the moment where I just have to sink and I'm looking up at John. Sorry, when I sink and I'm looking up at John. And it went down to the bottom of the tank through a little eyelet, and then 2 divers on the other end of that rope, and on cue, they just swam their guts out, pulled me straight down. And I think the FX did some red eyes, as well. It was just, I don't know why it's fun, because, my head was popping, you're running out of air, but I just had such confidence in the whole team, he never takes his eyes off me. The 4 divers all come, flying in and pull me straight to the top. It was kind of a fun way to spend the day.
Josh is very smart in that aspect of putting the storylines together, because I'll come up with action pieces that fit within what he's trying to convey in the story. How many action pictures have you seen where there's no story and they're just throwing a lot of action? You're bored.
At least that's the thing that's the most important to me, is what are we getting from the characters while these things are going on? Because without it, it's just kind of action porn.
We have a lot of difficult production days on the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Go!
The level of organization that is required to execute the script is almost like a military operation.
Right, left.
There's a balance that you have to find when you're making these shows between pushing your actors and challenging your actors and pushing them too far.
And there's those big action sequences, you read them, just pages of cars rolling and guns being fired and people jumping out of windows. You're like, I ain't gonna see the daylight.
Some of the big days of the season I wasn't there for. I think Cameron stuck between those two trucks in Samson and Delilah. It was a huge, challenging day for them. The car flip in that episode was a huge, challenging day.
It's like preparing yourself for a marathon when you read those scripts. You're like, this is gonna be 19 hours every day and 7 units. I mean, we really work like a feature.
Production challenge for me is, how is the performance ultimately? You know, I think what we've learned how to do over time, well, especially when you have someone like Steve or Joel, is we can flip a car. You know, we can flip a car into the river. People have done it. You know, since the beginning of movies, they've managed to flip cars and things like that, and they only get better and better at it. For me, it's how do you get a dramatic performance within that production?
The fight with Bonnie in the elevator was the night that would never end. It was so difficult because it was supposed to be in a tiny elevator, and we had a bunch of big guys that run the cameras and are trying to do their jobs in light around us.
Action.
In the script, we designated that the fight should be different than what happens between a Terminator and a human. So that presented special challenges.
When you're trying to bend a poor girl like pretzel, you want to get things going fast and get it done, and that was very, very difficult.
3, 2, 1, go.
The script poses the question of, how do you really kill a Terminator? In doing our research, that a Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle would probably take out a Terminator. Our production team dutifully found replicas of it that are a little lighter, but we felt that the real rifle looked better in Brian's hands.
Gun weighed between like 35 and 40 pounds. It's not a gun that's meant to be fired standing. You're not supposed to like be running with it and doing what I did. To hold that kind of weight out like this and support it with one arm is, it sucks.
You wanted him.
Actors like to be pushed and challenged physically, emotionally. I mean, a lot of them, they're almost like adrenaline junkies. And I think that they like, to look at a scene, and if it's scary for them, that's also exciting for them.
I was really nervous about the squib that they put in my shirt, so when Jesse fired the gun directly at my abdomen,
the one that first comes to mind was towards the end of the last voyage of the Jimmy Carter, where Jesse shoots Queeg. I think that was about 4 or 5 pages long, and we were shooting that at the end of the day. There was everything from the heightened emotion in the scene to Queeg being shot and the practical effect, so that was a big task.
Guys, look! Metal!
Deets!
Ah!
We ended up shooting a major action scene on the Santa Monica Pier. And it was one of the worst places for me on the day that we shot there, simply because we were trying to do a very complicated action scene with thousands of civilians around us all the time.
Here we go.
There are a lot of advantages to shooting on a practical location as beautiful as the Santa Monica Pier because we get a production value that you can't get on a soundstage. The hard thing is that we have the elements also. We have seagulls, we have guano, and we also have a lot of spectators. We have a lot of people that are joining us for the shoot. I mean, I remember that there was a moment during that particular day where I was sitting at our video monitors watching a particular shot, and I wanted to speak to the director about it, and by the time I pushed my way through the crowd, he had literally moved on to the next scene. So we had that all day, you know, where, you know, we also had people looking into the camera, trying to get autographs.
A lot of paparazzi that were keeping us from being able to keep shooting. The fans were fun. It was fun to just be shooting in the middle of a normal day. That was pretty funny because we never get to do that, but it was amazing how many paparazzi showed up and how many shots it ruined, and we had to start over again.
We did the first take of the underwater stuff, and I just hit a panic, and it would not go away all day, and it was awful. I felt sick.
Thomas did have some issues in the water tank in terms of being able to kind of be pulled under and stuff, and it's stressful. I just looked at the footage and said, well, it looks great.
It's challenging, you know, because not only do we have to make sure we hold our breath long enough, we have to make sure we're acting the scene underwater. And sometimes you forget in the thrill of battle that, like, oh, I need some air. But there's an excellent team of divers and stunt crew down there, and you just, if you give them the right signals, they're right there. They swim in and give you some air underwater, or they shoot you right to the top. I'm a heavy weight for them because I've had trouble sinking, I think because of the wardrobe, and so we've loaded my pockets with about 16 pounds of lead shot.
When they have a rope on your ankles and they're pulling you down in this immensely deep, dark tank and you can't see anything, and you're relying on all these men with scuba gear when you go like this, that you have no air left, to rush in and you have to blow it out and then breathe it in. And I think I annoyed the crew a lot because I kept bobbing up and going, I can't. And they're like, we don't have the shot yet.
Well, being on the show was a little like being at ski class, where everybody is an amazing skier, and you are, you know, you're a beginner. You have no idea how to even begin. And it's exciting to be challenged. You know, I'm 42. I've been doing music since I was 15. It's just exciting to do something that scares me a little, and I'm not 100% sure of how everything figures itself out.
Now, having done movies and then doing this it's an incredible amount of work.
We believe that the Terminator franchise offers a vast narrative arena to tell amazing stories, but it makes for big challenges on a television schedule.
Writer's room, we would discuss a certain element and we'd realize, you know, this is going to be a Rob Hall thing.
What Rob does well is he pushes to the limit kind of what it is that we're trying to do. He'll take that idea out to its sort of platonic ideal.
The process of script to screen is usually something like this. We get a script, 8 or 9 days later, we're gonna start shooting that episode. They'll give it to me, we'll go to a concept meeting, we'll sit down. I'll usually have all these ridiculous, grandiose ideas, and I'm usually overly optimistic, like, yeah, we can do that. And then I go back to the shop and have a meltdown session with all the guys in the shop and go, how the hell are we gonna do this in less than a week?
What Rob does is make sure that there is a credible reality created when there's a fight between a Terminator and another Terminator, or a fight between a Terminator and another human.
This season for us started off with a bang, literally. And with Cameron in particular, she starts off the entire episode with her face hanging off from the Jeep explosion.
He does things that I think are just extraordinary, like the damage on Cameron's face in Samson and Delilah.
That's 2, 3. Yeah, perfect.
Summer has this very tiny, dainty, porcelain-like face, and anything you put on her, it's the old problem that you're always dealing with prosthetics. It's a subtraction addition problem. You know, you're doing this side of my face, but it's supposed to be recessed, but obviously I have to add things to it. I can't scoop out this side of my face, so it's a sleight of hand. It really is. You're trying to add things to make it look like there's less, and that's a big magic trick. It can be helped or it can be ruined by lots of things: lighting, camera angles.
There's so many things that he has to think about to make it all work. And I'm really proud of what he's been able to do. Don't always love the hours that I have to spend in his chair, but we've got a system where I can kind of fall asleep and wake up with half my face missing.
In television, you want to acquire as much practical effects as you can on camera. You'd rather do that than try to do it CG. It makes it more real for the actors. It gives an immediacy to the footage, and it tells the story in a much more effective way.
You're never not hurt in a fight, you know, unless you're Superman. So it makes you feel like you've been in a fight. It makes you feel like you've been through something, and it's kind of nice. You can feel some blood running down.
The episode we did where Cameron cuts into her arm, you know, that was all, you know, a prop that was created by Rob.
It'll be like this. So the girl, the hand double, puts her hand up through the table like so.
Right.
It's blended off, and so.
Because Rob Hall's makeup effects are so good at that moment that we're shooting it, we can focus on what's actually happening between Cameron and John. Because what viewers will take away from that scene is that when John fixes her hand, with her arms splayed open like that, Cameron holds John's hand.
You feel any different?
Yes.
When we shot Cromartie's head off, that was sort of a combination of Rob Hall and Jim Lima, and those two guys really worked together.
What we did was we built a green screen appliance for Garrett. So we brought Garrett into the shop and took a live cast of him, and then, like I said, we built this essentially like a donut-shaped round piece of flesh that could be applied on and blended off. And then to take that one step further, we also built a head of Garrett that was totally lifelike. It was a likeness head of him. And then we built all the damage. So we do have a real practical element of this skull damaged and messed up that then Jim's guys were able to take Garrett with the green screen head and then take our head and do cyber scans of each one and then combine those two. So what you're seeing inside of Garrett's head is actually our fake head.
We had felt that we did the shot of a Terminator having his head blown off really well, and Mr. Ferguson is ill today. So we felt that we didn't need to do that again, but we did want to show the devastation of a plasma burst against a Terminator's head.
You know, I always find that old school is the best school.
The death of Queeg is going old school.
With Queeg, we were going back to trying to come up with a way to do it. Do we want to do something like we did with Garrett? And Guy B, the director, said, why don't you just make an appliance that goes around and we'll cut a hole for his head and stick him in. I was like, that's brilliant.
And Rob created the residue and flesh, and it works great. We added a little bit of special effects smoke, and it looks like a Terminator got his head, half his head blown off by a plasma gun. Rob did some fantastic things, not only with the stiletto in the eye, but also with the shot where the antagonist Terminator gets its neck broken.
We were shooting very fast in that elevator. We're doing a lot of little pieces, second unit. Some of it was out of order. That piece with the eye, you know, it had a little plate on it with a fake heel coming out of it, and that had to go on last, and it had to go on very quickly. So the only challenge with that was just standing by on set with prosthetics and being able to go, okay, now she's got the cheek piece, okay, now she's got the heel in her eye, and go.
These are little pieces of vacuum plastic that we've had chrome plated in the shop and Almost Human. Now, she's not wearing this, but essentially what happens is this would be glued on and then we'd put the prosthetic over it. So that's what we did here.
I think the ultimate goal when you're doing my job is just to make it look real. and there's only a slight difference between real to the eye and real to the lens.
I just really respect Rob's vision. He's such an artist, and what he does is incredibly delicate.
I really do love the challenge. I love it when it works. You know, sometimes you beat yourself up and you're like, man, it was almost there. It was almost exactly what I wanted. Most of the time, people are right when they say, oh, only you notice those little things, and that's probably true, but I think that you only really grow as an artist if you're always pushing yourself and you're always beating yourself up. I mean, I think that really, it's gotten me to where I am, and I'm in a pretty happy place right now. I mean, get to work on Terminator and get to do all this great stuff.
One of the most important things that we have to do for our audience is maintain a suspension of disbelief. They just simply get into the story because they believe that Rob has created a real Terminator. In terms of planning a sequence like the fight between the contortionist and Summer Glau in The Tower is Tall and the Fall is Short, there has to be lots of discussions, and you have to know what's going to happen on the stage before you get there. The actresses have to know to feel comfortable in what they're doing. All these fights can cause injury if they're not rehearsed properly. So they have to rehearse all these stunts over and over again. We asked Joel to give us a tape of the action that he was describing to us because we wanted to see it.
They're so busy writing and they're on set, can't come over here for 2 hours. Let me show you the guys the fight, and then we do a quick edit together and get their approval on it.
We wanted to really make sure that we had a really great, cool, unique fight.
That ended up being a second unit project, which was great for me because I had a blast shooting it. Action. Go. Now we're in the elevator. Hit. Boom. Good.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Little kid comes through, looks up at both of you guys. Follow him. Parents walk through as the door closes, and action. And slam. That's okay.
You can let it go. Am I still kicking you, or did we take that out?
You can kick it, someone can just grab it, which I think would be cool. You know, if she just kicks up someone, you just grab it, and then choke her with her own leg.
Oh, it's good there.
Yeah, right. And come up. Break her. Yeah. Right. Cool.
This is evidence of the process that Joel went through. And it's really fantastic because you see a direct connection between the moves on the tape that they rehearsed and what we actually shot. It really all gets back to what makes good filmmaking and good television, and it's preparation. It's good writing and good preparation.
When I first saw the effect of me coming out of the urinal, I was screaming with excitement.
Jim's task for season 2 has been enormous. We have very, very limited amounts of time to turn around these effects.
I would say the biggest challenges were to make the Terminator future familiar. My job primarily is specifically to explore the possibilities of the visual storytelling of the show.
Whatever visual effects appear, I think those are incidental to what you're doing. And I think that we've very rarely written something that is just doing an effect for an effect's sake.
It begins with an idea, and the idea is character-driven. Josh writes character arcs. And what's really cool about that is that it means something. At the end of the day, you know, you can do the greatest visual effect in the world, but if it doesn't mean something emotionally to the audience, it won't have any impact.
Jim Lima is a tremendous resource for our production as visual effects supervisor, and he is a deep, deep well of creative ideas.
The first place all this starts is in shot design, and I start immediately with like little thumbnail sketches of what, you know, what is the story that has to happen here, and then in the process of doing that, it also becomes a blueprint of execution. These are the things we're going to need to do to be able to capture that.
He's like having Leonardo da Vinci on some level in the room all the time.
I'm very art and design driven, and this is something that I've always done, and it's my approach, is that, you know, I look at it as a graphic novel or animation. And what do those things start off with? Those two particular pieces of entertainment start off with drawings.
We'll sit in a production meeting and he will pass me notes that have crazy ideas on it. He had one about the eel in Weaver's office being the key to a time machine. And it was, you know, just completely out there.
What we're trying to do with digital visual effects is tell the story. It's always in service of the script that we create digital visual effects.
We can ever do several versions of this if you like. We can ever do this, the recoil this way. You know, so then that way it'll look like Terminator head this way. Yeah, exactly. You have to go in with a plan. The storyboards, the script, the shot breakdown. I work very closely with the directors and the executive producers on before we go into battle, here's what we're going to do. And again, she can do this all in slow motion. You know, she can do it at like a half speed, and then I'll speed ramp it, and then we'll have the actual vehicle smash.
I just ease back. Terminator Heart was designed by Jim Lima, who designs all endoskeletal type things here, and he did a fantastic job, as you can see. This is something he literally, during our production meeting, he sat there and sketched this and showed it to James, and he was like, yeah, I think it was cool.
He's also somebody that is particularly great for us to work with in a television show because he can work so quickly.
How much money do we have and how much time do we have? Those two things are caveats for everything that we do in terms of our visual effects.
It's a basketball game. You have a plan, but man, you get out there and the other team starts hitting you with stuff. You have got to be able to be spontaneous and make an adjustment quickly. So on set, I will constantly rewrite the storyboards and go, ooh, we should be doing it this way. Or the director sees an angle or there's a performance that suddenly none of us would have thought about. Let's go in that direction. Visual effects was...
We can go to him and say, okay, Jim, we need to design an HK prototype that is also reminiscent of the California drones for episode 13, which is Earthlings Welcome Here. Now, that's not easy. It's easy for Jim.
There is some sort of strange, fantastical engineering inspiration to most of the things that he creates, and it isn't. He's not just saying, here's a ray gun, or here's how we're gonna do our time machine. He wants it to have a science behind it.
Here's the real world over here. In the real world, there's designers and engineers, and they design things that are manufactured and made for us to use. Cars, airplanes, bridges, things like this. In feature films, it used to be, oh, that's just Hollywoodized. But, the post-Jim Cameron era is all about design things that are so rooted in reality. There's so much of reality in the DNA of that design that it could be real.
It makes everything just feel more realistic, and you're not pushing it, just because it's a science fiction show, you're not pushing it to a place where it seems ridiculous.
In the story of Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, things that are designed have to fit within the narrative. And so it has to be engineered, but it also has to tell a story. It has to tell a story that's either about its character or about its function. For example, the T-1001. When the T-1000 was first introduced in 1992 in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, it was an incredible leap forward. There was a shift in technology and possibility in filmmaking. But then something happened, something that wasn't good. It became ubiquitous. Suddenly, everything was being morphed. You had dishwasher commercials that were morphing, and tire commercials and jelly bean commercials. Suddenly, everything was morphing.
We had a precedent. We had a precedent from Terminator 2. And I really laugh at our initial conversations about it now, because we talked about it and Jim said, I think we'll be able to do it faster, and I think we'll be able to do it better, and I think we'll be able to, do it cheaper.
After the urinal morph, which took the 90 different passes, I said to Jim, I thought you said that all this morphing thing was easy now. He's like, I was wrong.
It was really tough to sort of get it to the point where it kind of looked right.
Just because you have a program that morphs something doesn't mean it ends up looking like you want it to look, especially if you're morphing things like a toilet into, Shirley Manson.
It was just so cool and seemed very sort of in tune with particularly the first two Terminator movies that I was a huge fan of, and I was like, oh my God, that could have come straight out of like T1 or 2, so I was really chuffed. I think he's done an amazing job.
To be the T-1000, we had to do a 3D rendering of her in various different costumes. Then, and this goes to performance and acting, she needs to act like a liquid metal Terminator and get that movement right.
I became such a great actress that I actually became a urinal. It was really impressive.
Sorry I pissed you off, Mr. Tuck.
I live for pushing the visual possibilities of the technology. And the more difficult and the more complicated it is, and especially if it hasn't been done before, that's where I live. That's what I want to do. That's where I want to be.
Just having a guy who can manage the visual effects side of it and also really just contributes on a story level and design level has been incredibly important. He's been here since the beginning, and he's one of the voices of the show visually, and I wouldn't really know what to do without him.
Visual effects are always at the service of the story. When I design something for the show, there's a sense of dread, there's a sense of points and spikes and horror about the thing, a demonic, nightmarish, childhood fever dream vibe about it. The intent of that is to put these things into your subconscious. And that's the kind of dread that is kind of always percolating. It's in Josh's amazingly genius scripts. I like to think I also am putting that into the visual effects.